I think the last 6 months has been beneficial, just kind of understanding that pivot and maneuvering through that. But as far as area is concerned, I think the area that I think is probably going to be the next upcoming area is probably going to be... I have so many different challenges to work through.
Yeah.
And I think that also is a part of perseverance, right? And continuing to push forward, even in my position. Because sometimes when a person comes to me, they automatically don't think they're going to be able to buy.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Bros podcast. Today I have Magan Battle.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing today?
I am doing well.
We have had several interactions and a lot of great interactions, which is sometimes not typical with agents. And I've always been impressed with your mindset, with your professionalism. And so I wanted to, have you on the podcast and talk through some of that. I think it's always good to talk about mindset and what that takes. And then in addition to that, you have great knowledge of what customers are looking for and hot pockets in Birmingham. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
When did you get your brokerage license?
Back in August.
Okay. I'm thinking about getting mine, not for the sake. I don't really have desire to open
me
one.
Either.
But
I ain't have it either.
I was like, I might as well get it. It's an extra.
But they plan on changing the rules.
So it might be good to do it sooner than later.
Yeah.
Just making it harder or what?
Making it harder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think they should make the barrier to entry to be an agent harder, personally.
Absolutely.
So the hard thing for me, though, is you can make it harder all you want, but the skills you need to be an agent really are hard to be taught. They're more caught.
I feel like I'm just now realizing that. Only because it's like, now so many new agents come to me for help, and it's like I'm thinking that these are things that they automatically know. It's the smallest things that I'm like, you don't know that?
Yeah.
Like you don't do this? And some of them I'm partnering with them on deals to pass some of the business off, because I really just want to kind of chill right now and focus and plan. And I'm like, I'm looking at the group messages like, why are you sitting in something like this? Like, why are you doing that?
Yeah. What's life skills?
Yeah.
It's like basic business skills of don't text someone an official offer, like email it.
Right. Or don't tell them until you get it. Things that I really thought that people everybody knows. And I'm learning more and more.
Yeah. And I think it's going to get worse and worse as you have a generation growing up of young people who don't have those soft skills. I mean, I was started working when I was 14 years old at a Taco Bell. See, you just you're like, I'll take it 14 and I'll up it.
I was walking dogs and cleaning houses. I was tutoring. I
love it.
Walking dogs. I was like, Auntie, I'll clean your house. I'll do this. I'll do that. Because for one, we grew up really poor. Mm-hmm. So it's like, well, if I know I want to eat, then I know I can do this. And my neighbor, we were in apartments, and my neighbor next door to me had 3-4 dogs. Oh, wow. And so I was like, well, can I walk your dogs before school? Can I walk before I get on the bus? He was like, yeah. And he paid me $50 a week for it. So at 11...
You're making $50 a week at 11? Shoot. That's good.
And I was literally paying for my brother's haircuts, giving my mom money for groceries.
That's awesome.
At 11.
Man.
And then I started working at McDonald's at 14.
I listened to an interview. I wish I remember the entrepreneur. She does Skims now. Do you know who I'm talking about? What's her name? Anyway, she grew up in kind of a poor side of London. And it was kind of one of those things of she just always had that entrepreneur, go-getter spirit. And it makes me think of nature versus nurture. Yeah. And how much is that, in my DNA is who I am today is nurtured versus just it's just kind of who I am. I grew up this way with this so
I think it's a mix for me, and that's very interesting though, because I've never really asked that, wondered that about myself, but I do think that how we grew up played a huge part in me being who I am, sure, because it's I think it's a pleasure versus pain thing. You don't want this pain, so you do what you have to do in order to get to this particular pleasure, right?
Correct.
But the amount of pain kind of outweighs everything in a sense, though, because you're like, man, I don't never want to go back to that.
Yeah.
But I think that at the same time, I don't know. I don't, even if I don't know if we were not poor, if I still would have automatically been like, all right, let me go get this money. Like,
see, I think you would have.
I know.
I think you would have. I just think that potentially the journey would have looked differently and not been as quick, potentially.
Probably so. I probably wouldn't have the motivation to do it as quickly. That's probably what it
because our environment doesn't form. But like I said, at the same time, there's a bunch of people that you grew up with that are not in the position you're in right now.
Absolutely. That's true.
And so, that was the same with this lady. She was like, I mean, basically she may be a billionaire at this point, but honestly, but at this point, like, she just always had this drive to do better, always had this drive. And that's actually one of the funny things. So when we've done a few deals together at this point, and I've always been impressed with you.
I appreciate that. Same. It's always love.
And so when I was like, I just have to have you on the podcast, because honestly, I
appreciate
we really don't have an MO to bring agents on the podcast, because I'm an agent. So I'm like, why would I bring my competition? I joke.
I'm flattered.
It's collaboration versus competition. Yes. But that said, I'm trying to bring something different than I can bring, right? And I feel like I bring that agent perspective, so I want to bring on like bankers and insurance people and all that. So anyway, all that to say is, that's why I wanted to have you on, because I have always been impressed with our conversations, our transactions, the level of excellence, the enthusiasm for your job.
I appreciate that.
And I kind of wanted to just sit down and say, where did it come from? like how can I be more like Magan Battle? If I can get a little bit to rub up on me, then we're winning. So
first, I'm super flattered, first and foremost, truly. But it's vice versa, honestly, because you know how some conversation with agents go on the phone, and it's just like, bro, why are you even like this? What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
But honestly, like I say, same with me, with you. I'm like, man, Todd is so cool. Like, we can be sitting here talking on the phone for an hour. Like, oh yeah, by the way, I do need to do.
We gotta talk about a deal.
I actually do need to talk to you about this, though. But I don't know, man. I think for me, like I said, I think a lot of it, as far as enthusiasm, I think that's just a part of my nature.
Yeah.
I think that's just part of my personality. I feel like I've experienced worse parts of life where, I kind of had to smile through certain things. And so I feel like that, just growing up, I think that made me enthusiastic about a lot of things, because it made me be like, well, it could always be worse, right? Because I've experienced worse.
Yeah.
So people are like, well, how are you doing today? I'm like, I'm doing well. I can't complain. It doesn't help me at all.
Right. Yeah.
Because it doesn't, right? And so I think that's part of my enthusiasm. It's just like I've experienced worse. So it's like, well, why be sad about anything, right? Why not keep a positive outlook anyway? So I think I'm just a natural positive person in general.
Yeah.
But as far as my desire or motivation to like constantly, continue to, excel past my next level, I think it's, again, like pain versus pleasure. It's like I've experienced this, and I don't want my kids to have to go through those things.
Yeah.
Like, I know what it's like to, not have food in the house or water in the house or lights, And so because I know what that feels like, I never want my children to even be a snippet, even a little close to it. And I don't even have kids yet, but I don't want them to even know what that looks like.
Right.
I don't even want them in that arena at all. For me, I think it's just like, I want to be the one that takes my family out of the positions that they've been placed in.
That's awesome.
So I want to be the one that, like, I want to be the matriarch of my family, to where they have a huge picture of me on the wall. It all started with Mama Megan. It all started with her.
I love it.
She set the tone. She was the first millionaire in the family, and she passed it on down from there. So I think that has a lot to do with it for me.
I've thought, because I do have 2 kids, and I've thought a lot about the idea or concept of how difficult to make their lives
without
being too difficult.
That's hard.
Because I will say some of the formative years, we were discussing, I had a job at 14. You upped me by saying you had it at 11. I thought I was doing pretty good.
You are.
I did have some babysitting jobs before then, so I guess
we still started same time.
But all that to say is those things shaped me. They shaped my work ethic. They helped me interact with people. They helped me deal with difficult situations, be professional.
Yes.
And so there is an amount in our lives that need to be a struggle.
Yeah.
And almost, I was listening to this podcast with Jordan Peterson, and I think there's a lot of people talking about the idea that honestly the journey and the struggle is actually where you get the most dopamine release in the process of accomplishing a goal.
That's very interesting.
And so they were talking about planning trip and all that, and a lot of people go arrive at that trip and they'll think, I'm just excited about planning the next trip. And so sometimes we find this thing of our life struggling when really that is the journey that brings fulfillment. Yeah. And so, but I love what you were saying, that you just have these goals of basically changing the story of your family, changing the story moving forward. From Magan on, it's gonna be different. But also, I deal with that too, because I want that for my family too, but I also don't want to give them too much.
Yeah.
I think it was Shaq was he his kids came to him one time and were like, "Hey, Dad, are we rich?" He's like, "No, I'm rich." You ain't
still
rich.
gotta work for it. And I think that's hard. Even with my nephew, because it's he is the first baby of our intermediate family. So it's kind of I have two other siblings, my brother and my sister, and I'm the baby. So my nephew, though, is the only grandchild per se, right? And so even with him, when he came along, right, it was I was getting into my career, and so now it's I've reached a certain level of success, and I can do certain things for him, but now I'm struggling with him.
Should I?
Do I? Should I? And I think... The Alchemist it's funny that you say that about the journey, because The Alchemist is one of my favorite books, of all time. Have you not read The Alchemist?
No. I've heard of it, but I haven't.
Oh
I need to be a better reader.
Audible is where it's at.
I should
Audible is where
it's
at. Audible is where it's at, because I can't sit down and pick up a book. That's just not me. But I'm in the car all the time anyway. Right. So it's the best time for me to be able to listen to a book as opposed to music, because you're driving anyway.
Perfect.
What are you gonna be doing? You might as well. Yeah. But The Alchemist is such a good book. It is probably one of the best life books I've ever read ever. And it's a fictional story, right? But there are so many gems within the book. It's you'll be rewinding it multiple times. Wait, what did they just say? Wait a minute. And so the story talks about this boy who is having this dream every night up under this. I think it's called a sycamore tree. Right. But every night he's having this dream that he finds this treasure, and so. He can't stop having the dream. So he goes to this gypsy woman to find out what his dream means and figure out what does he do at this point. Right. So she says, I'll tell you what the dream means, but you have to give me 10% of your treasure. Whoa. And so he doesn't think that he's really gonna find it, honestly. So he's like, all right, fine, sure, I'll give it to you. Deal. Yeah, whatever, I'll give it to you, right?
We as realtors, we want to negotiate to 5.
Yeah. He's like, right, or none. Girl, you don't tell me what this is about. So
that's awesome.
So she tells him what the dream. She doesn't even. I can't even remember if she tells him exactly what it means, but she just tells him that he has to go. I think to the pyramids in order to find his treasure.
Right.
Long story short, and I'm not gonna tell you the book.
Yeah, don't.
I'm not gonna ruin it. But he learns so much along the journey. Right. So much along the journey. So much so that he is truly transformed into a different person when it's all said and done. And every single step, he encounters so much turmoil at every turn it's like, dang, he's going through this too. Like every point is something else happens to him, something else. And you can't help but see yourself though in his shoes as the main character. It's almost like you are analyzing your life with his life
through the context of the journey.
So you're thinking about something that happens to him, but yet you're thinking about something that happened to you. And then the gems that they give make you think about what you learned in that situation.
Yeah.
And in the end, though, you realize that it truly is the journey that really makes us who we are. Like,
100%.
If I had not went through all the things that I've went through, I wouldn't be myself. I wouldn't have learned. I wouldn't have gained wisdom. And I think, even when people pray and ask for certain things, right, it's like you do realize you're not just going to get that, right?
Yeah. God's going to put the stuff in your pathway to learn it.
You do realize, like, oh, you want patience? Like, oh, okay, yeah. I'm going to send you something that's going to require you to have some patience, right? And I think that's the thing that people don't realize. It's like it takes time for you to develop those things. And the journey is probably the most important piece of the puzzle.
It really is. I've always said, and I heard this somewhere, it was talking about becoming a millionaire. And the journey, they were more excited, and I've kind of taken this mindset on my journey to financial freedom. It's the things you have to be to acquire that level of responsibility of income, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in order to build something like that, like you're about to start a brokerage,
right?
Which congrats, that's awesome.
Thank you.
But it's going to require things out of you that's never been required before.
Right.
It's going to push you and challenge you. And so the actual, like you said, the actual reward is not your brokerage.
Yes.
It's the skill sets that you attain during that journey.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I'm at a place in my life fully confident you could literally put me in rags on the street tomorrow.
Right.
And I'll build it again.
Right.
I'll build it again.
Right.
And I'll probably build it faster than I built it.
Yeah, because I learned.
Because I know.
I know exactly how to do it.
I have full confidence, and I would go, if I had to, I'd go to Taco Bell again and I'd work my butt off to feed my family if that's what it took.
Right.
But I have full confidence I don't have to do that because I've built a journey of life skills that hopefully will sustain and help me grow something bigger than that. So that's amazing. So let's do talk because you do a lot of real estate.
Yes.
So I've heard. Some would say.
Somebody said that.
So I love all that mindset, but I do want your perspective because we both do we do some residential, we do some investing, we talk with lots of different people.
Yeah.
And, on this podcast, we like to give Birmingham insight.
Yes.
We like to talk about what areas are hot, what areas are maybe pulling back, what's happening in city councils, all that kind of stuff. So
for sure.
I want you to deep dive for us on the most recent news, the most neighborhoods you're liking right now, like whether it's residential, investing. Sometimes those collide because when an area is becoming really popular for owner occupants, it still is a good chance for someone to flip.
Right, for sure.
So from your perspective, all the people you work with are not my people. So I want to hear, like we have different types of different clients.
Yeah. For sure.
What is your latest 6 months been like in real estate? Yeah. What are you liking?
So I think that in terms of, I'll say the latest 6 months has been a little exciting for me, honestly, just because I think for everybody, the first start of the year was a little slow. Yeah, it was. Just considering the rates. So for me, a lot
What happened with rates?
Just killed us.
It's like anybody in the spade of real estate, we don't want you to work.
Yeah. It's like, do you want me to survive?
They don't.
But so the first half, was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so then, rates started to come down recently. And so that's been exciting. But I think also just kind of understanding how to pivot through that particular type of market has been really exciting as well, just because it's like, oh, wow, that's showing me that I really can maneuver through any market.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing a lot of grant money as far as like available to first-time buyers. That's making a huge difference just because again, strategy is everything. So because everything is based around supply and demand, it's like, okay, well, there's less of a demand, which means that we don't have to compete as much. Well, if we don't have to compete as much, then I can negotiate more. If I can negotiate more, then I can get a little bit more in closing costs. That little bit could buy down the interest rate. And now we have a good balance, to be able to do both. So I think the last 6 months has been beneficial, just kind of understanding that pivot and maneuvering through that. But as far as area is concerned, I think the area that I think is probably going to be the next, upcoming area is probably going to be Titusville, honestly. Just because. I like it a lot, and it's already happening, a little bit. And I partner with Titusville Development. Okay. And so we've done a couple of new construction in the neighborhood. Too.
What about north and south? Because I've noticed a huge, it's like you cross that north side. So are you talking more south or are you talking all?
Both.
Okay.
Because even if, and of course it will be a gradual, progression.
Yeah, kind of like East Lake. Right now, and I still think it's in transition. But,
it is.
But south and north are still very different.
Exactly. And it will be, right? But I do feel like either way, you're still talking about 7 minutes to the stadium.
Yeah.
New stadium at that. You're still talking about walking distance to UAB.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're still talking about being able to buy property $30,000-$40,000 sometimes. That's a huge difference.
And I drove it. That's funny you say that because I drove that area when I was first getting into finding off-market stuff. Probably, I guess that was 3 years ago now. I was doing some driving for dollars and just trying to figure out this investing thing. I was so green. I'm still very green, but and I was blown away at the potential. And there was actually a lot of owner occupants with pride of ownership.
It is.
And so I like that pocket a lot.
I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, because especially which the rates have affected the ARV for sure. But even, if you consider even now with, everything being the way it is, rates are improving a little bit. Right. I think a 3.2 could easily go from 145 ARV north or south. Yeah. And so with that being said, and with there being a shortage on affordable housing, it's kind of like, now you still have the crime. It's still a thing, but at the end of the day, it's in transition, and I think that's an opportunity for someone, especially someone young. That is a huge opportunity for you to be able to get in. And then there's so much grant money out there. If you can get into a house that literally costs you nothing, essentially, to really get into it, and then it's growing in value substantially over the next 5 years. I mean, it's kind of incredible. You can't really lose.
So Titusville, and where else? What else do you like?
I think that I still feel like, of course, it's a little late for Norwood in a sense. I mean, I'm still seeing some properties, though, as of recently, that depending on where it's at, I'm still seeing some that are affordable.
But I don't think you're seeing the margins.
No.
Where it's savvy for an investor.
No. I think Fountain Heights is going to change a lot. Okay. And I also feel like Ansley as well. Now, Ansley is a little tougher.
Well, it's such a big area.
It's such a big area.
That I think it's going to be hard for it to switch so quickly.
It's not going to be quick.
Yeah.
I think that's a long term.
What about the Bush Boulevard area? That's coming up. I mean, especially if you're on that main strip. There's some beautiful houses. And they're large. Oh, yeah. They're so huge. And then at the same time, like I say, even in that sense, right, that's still super close to 5 Points West, which still has the Crossplex, and then now they have a Starbucks. I mean, it's like, what do you think? I mean, what do you think is going to happen? It's not going to be immediate, but it's happening. And I think those are the telltale signs that kind of show you, like, well, surely they're not. I mean, if you look at any other poor neighborhood, where are you seeing a Starbucks at? Yeah. So it's not there. No, it's true.
So it kind of gives you a forecast.
I love what our mayor's done in general to help clean up lots and clean up neighborhoods and all that. I think the only thing that I'll have a hard time with the policy is that everybody wants the help. Yeah. And when you spread it so thin, it becomes like, you say a bunch of things not quietly instead of one thing loudly. And I wish that we would just say, hey,
we're going to do
this neighborhood's on the docket for the next 5 years.
Let's just focus on
Let's focus on it. We're going to fix this. We're going to get this and all the money and all that. And everybody's got to wait. And I know that's not the political way to do it and everybody being uproar and all that. But like from a business standpoint, it makes sense to say, hey, we're going to focus on Ensley and get it better and make sure there's thriving businesses. I think the issue with Eastlake that I don't love yet is retail. Has not popped into Eastlake yet.
No.
And I think if it once that transition, and hopefully it will, once retail kind of starts to anchor in there, I think it's going to help it a lot. But right now, I'm kind of
I think they have to incentivize the business owners. I think that would make a huge difference. Like if they incentivize them to be there in those neighborhoods, it would make a huge difference. But it's like, well, if I'm choosing where I'm going to take my business to, am I going to choose to take it somewhere where I got to take the risk of people breaking in?
Right.
Or do I take it here where I don't have to worry about that? Yeah. Well, if I'm incentivized, then I might take the risk. I might be a little more willing.
Yeah. So if the mayor's listening, we got all the we have all the pieces. We got all the pieces, all that thing. They're very complex problems.
Oh yeah, huge
and hard to solve, overnight. But I do think that what I love is that overall, I do think the progress of real estate does help people. And,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Someone make the argument of like investors versus all these different things, and I think there's definitely good and bad investors out there
for sure.
And then same thing with good and bad, owner occupants.
Yeah.
So I've thought with this grant money, and tell me what you think.
Yeah, tell me.
So this may be a little controversial, but that's what we hear.
Let's go.
All right. So take the idea of someone who gets a lottery ticket, wins the lotto. Okay.
Right.
Not buys the lottery ticket, wins the lottery. Okay. It has been proven that they typically are in the same position or worse off years later than when they won.
Right.
And it goes back to the whole thing of like, if you grow your to $1 million, you have to have the character, the discipline to sustain it, to build up to it. But if it's just given to you, you don't have the skill sets to do, or the knowledge, all that. And I think somewhat in the same way,
with the grant money.
With the grant money, you're getting people who were typically used to renting and don't understand the principles of home ownership, which is you got to mow your lawn every once in a while. You got to, you got to maintain the property. You got to save for that rainy day when that roof goes bad.
Right.
I think there's, now I'm not saying a huge percentage, and I'm all for this opportunity.
Absolutely.
But I think there'll be a percentage. I think it's going to be small. But I think there'll be a percentage of those homes that are dilapidated in the next 5 to 10 years.
I agree. I think that there's a mix of both.
Yeah.
I think that you have people, like you said, who literally were not prepared for it.
Right.
Didn't put any skin in the game for real.
Right.
And now
so
it's like,
I got a gift.
Oh, well.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I think there are some people like that, right? But I think that that's where we come in a sense, right? To be able to give them the knowledge to say, hey, look, and me, I have a very real conversation with my clients in the beginning, right? Like, hey, so why do you want to buy a house?
Right.
Right? Let's talk about that. Like, what's your reason? Like, what are you even thinking about?
Right.
Because that gives you insight into a person's mindset, right? And then you make sure that they know, well, at the same time, a house is a bigger commitment, right? Yeah. So you are going to have to put some money aside for maintenance. You are going to have to do X, Y, and Z, right? So we're going to get your home warranty. But after this warranty's up, I'm going to need you to renew it, right?
Yeah.
And so having those conversations, I think, makes a difference as well for a lot of those people, because you're giving them the knowledge that they may have not received from the next realtor, right? So if somebody's just, oh, come on, let's get you in the house, and they're not explaining to them, right, or walking them through, you got to understand what type of person you're dealing with, right? So if I know this is somebody who never had home ownership in their whole family lineage, right? I got to have a little bit of a deeper conversation with you around this, because I don't want to see you fail, right? My goal is to empower the community. So what do I look like just throwing you in there.
Yeah, it's not going to help anybody.
It doesn't help anybody, right?
So,
but
and that comes back to like getting an agent like you who knows to say, hey, there's some other conversations we gotta have around this responsibility.
Yes, like let's give you a few people that you may need. You might need a plumber. I'm gonna give you a list. You might need an electrician. I'm gonna give you that, right? Yeah. And so a lot of those people after the fact look at me for everything. They're like, which is awesome. Which is a good and bad thing.
Your phone be lighting up all the time.
It's a good and bad thing. It's like, girl, I don't know who do that. Like, I don't know. But I appreciate it because it shows that they trust me, right? But take the opposite, right? Take the person who has been paying their bills on time for years and years and years and years and years. The person who just doesn't make enough to be able to save enough to be able to get there, right? And so it's like, I have the money to pay my earnest money. I got the money to pay my inspections. I have this money, but I don't have $6-7 grand, right? I don't have that to be able to pay for my down payment or pay for my down payment and my closing costs, right? So for a lot of people, and then you got to think, statistically, the average American has what? They don't even have $1,000 in their account.
It's crazy.
So from a statistical standpoint, it's like, well, how can I even, if the average person doesn't have $1,000, how in the world am I going to get you to save up $7,000 or $8,000?
It feels like a mountain. I mean, I remember when I didn't have 10 grand in my bank account. Right. And I was like, this feels, and the first time I did reach that, I was like,
wow. Then you're like,
and now I'll be writing checks like that all the time.
I mean, way more than this even
Yeah. But that is so good. And I wish the grants would do that education process. Now, obviously, it needs to be organic sometimes and like a hard target. I mean, the home buying process is so emotional.
Yes.
But I wish that the grant would say, hey, this is what homeownership looks like. This is what you need to be saving for. This is the responsibility you now have. Like all these different things, not just and they may be, but not that I know of. I think it's a lot of just file for it and get it. But at the end of the day, I am super excited about it because I think that it will scratch the itch of that ownership of someone and that pride of ownership. And I think it's going to help a lot more people than it hurts. So I wasn't trying to take that.
No, for sure.
But I do have that perspective of like, we have to definitely help people understand. You know, that so that they don't have the roof go out on them. Because, you know, your water gets in the house and you are up a river.
And now
literally and metaphorically.
Literally. And see, I've seen both. I've seen literally both. Like, I've seen the person, especially think about like the young professionals even, right? It's like, I've seen people literally get into their house in 2019. Didn't pay a down payment. Didn't pay any closing costs. They paid inspections, appraisal, right? Got their earnest money back at closing. All right.
They're getting paid.
Got paid at closing. I've had so many people get checks at closing.
Oh, yeah. It's wild. It's wild.
So you're getting this money back at closing, right? And so but a lot of these people already had savings. Right. Some of them already have savings. They're just choosing not to use their money, right? Which I'm super.
Oh, yeah. I'm all on board. As much liquidity as you can keep
right?
it.
So it's like, okay. But then literally within a 3-year time span, they netted $126,000.
Yeah.
It's like you have infinite returns, you know? Yeah. So that jump start, and we talk about like, you know, generational wealth.
Yeah.
That's a huge jump start without it being your money.
Have you seen the Netflix series 13th, I think?
Oh, the 13th?
I think.
The 13th?
I mean, no. Okay. I think it maybe is the 13th. But I mean, it's talking about segregation and
I watched it.
Poverty and all that kind of stuff. And they break down home ownership between minorities and it is just wild how much that affects the success in a financial sense, because I think success comes a lot of different ways for people. It's not just money, but success in a financial sense for a family is very tied to home ownership.
It is.
And so I'm actually a huge fan of it. And it's interesting. I'm working with a fund right now who does a lot of rentals, and we're dispoing some of the rentals. And it's been really cool because I've seen, I would say 70 to 80% of these dispos are going, we actually talked about one Keystone. And majority are going back to homeowners, owner occupants. And I thought when a fund buys a property, it would just stay in a fund and they would maybe just move them around fund to fund. And that may still somewhat happen.
For sure.
But it was an encouraging thing to see, like, they want the maximum for their investment, and that is typically going back selling to owner occupant. Because it has that tangible value.
But the affordability is there for that purchaser. And I think that's what makes all the difference. It's like, well, if you're going to be paying close to what you're going to be paying for rent anyway, and you can get into this house, and but like I say, give them that information to say, hey, look, yes, you finna get in, but you got to prepare for this. And I've literally seen the opposite. I've seen people, we were able to get you literally a $7,000 grant, and they were able at that time. You could get an additional second mortgage in cash though at closing.
Wow!
And it could go towards your repairs or whatever you wanted to do in the house, right? So she literally got back. I mean, probably because she got back some of her earnest money too. She probably walked away with like $14,000 in closing. And I told them now. I said, listen. At the end of the day, because there were things that they wanted to do in the house and all of this, right? But I also knew that these were the type of people that I needed to prepare them, right? To be able to say, hey, this is what you got to do. You walked away with $14,000.
Yeah.
And afterward, this was an older house, so we knew this, right? We knew it was going to be things that you need to do coming into it. That's why we got the money.
And they didn't put it
And they didn't put it in there. And then things started happening. And then they were like, oh, my God. And I'm like, y'all. Yeah. What happened to the money? Well, we bought furniture.
Yeah.
And it's like,
well, furniture ain't fixing the pipes.
Because
what are we doing? Expensive.
And
that's tough. Yeah.
And that was, and in the beginning, I felt so bad for them. Like, I started paying for some of the stuff. I was like, well, I'll help you out and do this. I'll do. But then I started thinking, y'all got $14,000. I got you $14,000. Like,
you got to do it yourself.
You gotta, and I think that's why I say it's a balance, right? Because some people just need the opportunity. Some people just need the leg up. Some people just need to be able to get in and see, like, oh man, this is possible. I can do this by doing this. And then some people, you can give every opportunity in the world, and they're still not gonna see for what it is.
People are people, and that's the thing. But the more I think about it, the American dream is there.
Yeah.
But I think for people who have less advantage, it is a lot harder to attain than people talk about.
Oh yeah. And
it takes a lot.
It's a mindset too.
It's a mindset, but I've also said this too, and I think about it in a timeline and of success and just building towards a goal. And so, people often underestimate the sustained amount of good decisions they have to make to accomplish something.
Yeah.
And so, and then when you have either personal things that bad choices or we'll call it economic or, issues with family or whatever that set you back, then you've increased your timeline and good decisions you have to do to overcome it. And it is incredibly hard for a person without the hardwired, caught skill set to overcome those things.
Absolutely.
It's very hard.
It's super hard. And I think that's been the hardest thing even with a lot of my clientele, because most of my clientele is first-time buyers.
Right.
Obviously, I have a lot of minority clients because I'm a minority. And so, because these are people that I went to school with or, church or whatever, right? And so, and then it's kind of like, man, Megan was able to get me into this house. I only had to pay this. So now they told this person, and now they told this person, now they told this person.
I got paid.
Right. Y'all got a check, right? So now everybody's like, Megan's the girl that gets everybody in with the checks. So I'm like, yep, that's
Shoot, I might have you work for me in my next house purchase. It sounded really excited.
I'm here. You can hire me, Todd.
Oh man, I love it.
It was like it's kind of like that's how my business became referral based, right? From that word of mouth, like, oh my God, we're able to do this, right? But in the beginning, it was just so hard. With some people, I have so many different challenges to work through.
Yeah.
And I think that also, is a part of perseverance, right? And continue to push forward even in my position, because sometimes when a person comes to me, they automatically don't think they're going to be able to buy.
Right.
I mean, it's like automatically in their mind.
It's almost in their ethos, or they're just
it's like nope, I know it's not going to work.
Oh,
they said to call you, but
it's
and
just,
I'm like, well, what do you think your credit score is right now? And they're like, I got a 640. I don't know, maybe 640, and I'm like, okay, so you're all right score wise, like you work a job. Like, yeah, I work. I've been working here like 2 years. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well,
that's good.
That's good. I'm like, all right. So then I'm asking them these questions, and I'm like, well, okay, check.
Yeah.
And so then they're like, but I know it's probably not going. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, hold on.
Where do you think that defeatist mentality comes from?
I think it's very deep rooted. I think that it goes back to history. Honestly, I think that if you think about like redlining and segregation and all those things, I think that historically it plays a big factor, right? Because if your great-great-grandma, or even grandma, right?
Yeah.
At this point, honestly, even if grandma went to try to get a loan or try to buy a house back then and she was unable to, and so now she's took that defeated mindset home, right? And so now she's like, well, this is all we're able to do. And now she's taught that to her kids, and now they've taught that to their kids. And it's this ongoing cycle, right? And so I think that that's where it comes from, honestly. And there is so many misconceptions within those communities of like, well, I got to have 20% down. You think you got to have 20% down because your grandma had to do this or whatever, right? And it's just nobody's been able to accomplish it because it's a mindset that's been passed down. Some things are true, like mindsets can be passed down from generation to generation. Yeah. And so I think that until you get someone who is a chain breaker within your family lineage to say, no, I talked to her and she said that I only needed this. Yeah. I have to get on the phone with parents sometimes. Like literally, to talk them through, to tell them like,
no, she can.
No, she really can.
And they're speaking into her ear like it's gonna go bad.
Yeah, right. And they're like, I don't know about that. I never heard about that. And I'm like, I'll put your mom on the phone. Like, put her on the phone. Like, call her right now. I'll send it to her right now.
Man, I just think that's so incredible that, I just had this thought, Megan, and you may have seen it this way or you may not have. But I think you're going to look back on your life and realize the wealth that you have is all the lives that you changed.
Oh, I appreciate that so much.
And not the money in your bank account.
I appreciate that.
And sorry, like, shouldn't get emotional on a podcast.
Oh, wow. You're going to make me cry.
Well, I think what we do, we care about people.
Absolutely.
Like, at the end of the day, I think if we were in it for the money, we just it would be pointless, right? But but we're here to care about money. I've allowed friends to get in homes, and I love the process. I love the process because I care about the quality of home they're in. And I'll walk into a house and I'll be like, "We're out."
This ain't
because
it.
this house is junk. Because I care.
Yes,
and I think the same thing is true for you. Is you care. You care about what you do, and I love that you're in your communities, loving on people, helping them walk through some of these situations and mindset issues. And I think you're going to look back on your life and you're going to look back at a whole line of people that you've helped in not only mindset, but also in their economic position, which is awesome.
I feel like that now, but it's when my clients, like I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and we were standing outside of a house after the showing and just talking or whatever. That's gonna be me every time. We're gonna leave and then we're gonna be out there just chopping it up. So
I love it.
We were out there talking and she was like, Megan, I'm just so proud of you. We went to high school together. So keep in mind, I went to Shelby County High School. So my dad is from Columbiana, and my mom is from Dolomite. Okay. So keep in mind now, the country and the hood. Okay. So
in love with sound.
So it's like I've seen both worlds in a sense, right? And so I've been to a school where I was the minority, and I've been to the school where I was the majority. Wow. Right? And so you look at both and you're like, oh man, this is totally different. First of all, day and night. I went to Shelby County, my 9th grade year, 10th through 12th, I was in Winona.
Okay.
So day and night, right?
Yeah,
so when I got to Winona, though, some of the things that they were learning in school, I had already learned in middle school in Columbiana.
Wow.
Which was really crazy to me. Because I'm like, why are y'all taking this now? I've learned that in 7th grade. Like, why are we doing this? But it opened my eyes up so much because I can see everything full picture, right? Full circle. And so I was standing outside talking to my client, and she was like, Megan, I'm just so proud of you. She was like, I've seen you sell so many houses to people we went to school with. She was like, and I don't think that they would have bought a house if it wasn't for you.
That's awesome.
And I was like, I felt that way, right? And they've told me, my clients genuinely, like, they, this industry is hard. And so real hard.
The highs are high, the lows are low.
It's like
yeah.
And so having those conversations with them where they're like, oh my God, Megan, like, thank you so much. Or they're crying at closing because they never thought this was possible for them. Or I'm calling them like, girl, do you know you got $100,000 in equity? Like, those conversations, they are what inspired me to keep things going.
Yeah, that's great.
And having that conversation with her, I said, I just don't feel like I've done enough. I was like, I feel like there's so many more people for me to help. And she was like, Megan, she was like, you're already helping. Like, you're already helping. And so I think for me, I care so much because I've seen what owning real estate can truly do for somebody. Yeah. And I think that because I almost feel like there's a group of people that have the wool over their eyes. That's kind of what I feel like. And I feel like part of my purpose in life is to be like, y'all, take it off. Like, to be like, this is what's available to you. And again, I think it's because it's something that they have thought for so long. It's just kind of been conditioned to think that it's not possible.
That's awesome.
And then
you can do
when
that.
you open the door up, and you're like, look, you can walk through. Yeah. It's yours to walk through. You got $2,000? You got $2,000. You work your job.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what? I just had this thought. I know this is like podcast when we're thinking about it, but this is my personality spitball. You know what would be so cool is for us to do a I don't even know what you call a meeting or whatever, but with all of your clients, and we sit down and we teach them about the second step.
Oh, yeah.
Which is taking their current house.
Oh, yeah.
And turning it into a rental and buying another house.
For sure. First of all, Todd, we're already on that wave here. This is the first step. We've already.
It's like the first step is owning. The second step is investing. And so, what does that look like? And how can I do it with a simple, like they can leverage literally another home mortgage to go get another place and turn their old place.
Yes.
I mean, like, how cool would that be?
So, it's funny that you say that because in August, right before, right after I passed my broker exam, I took my broker exam on Friday. We had the event on Saturday.
Right.
So I called it the Elevate Summer Soiree.
Okay.
And
well, I said meeting. You took it to another place with soiree. So I dip out at this point.
So first of all, you're going to be on the panel this next coming
soiree.
Yeah, you'll be at the soiree.
Yeah, I'll call it a meeting still. You are way more posh than I am.
But we was like, and that was my whole goal, right? I was like, man, I want to take people from wherever they are in their process, right? So if you are in a place where you're like, man, I want to buy a house, but I got to get my credit together, right?
Right.
We had a panel discussion first, and we started with credit.
Oh, that's awesome.
So after we did credit, then it was like, all right, let's talk about the financing. So then we had lenders come up about the financing, talk about those requirements. So then after that, it's like, all right, you got your first house. You were able to get finance. You purchased all of that. Okay, so now let's talk about building. Let's talk about investing. Let's talk about building wealth. And so we literally went step by step in the process, and we talked about HELOCs and wholesaling.
So you're already like 10 steps ahead of me. I love it, man. I love it. But education is going to help. And you
minds.
can YouTube it, but having someone that you know and trust,
yes, to
have
tell
that
you about it,
is great.
And at every point, even if my panelists were speaking, and I could see, I know most of the people in the room, right? So I'm watching them kind of be like, huh? Or I'm like, okay, y'all. So I'm translating. I'm literally like, okay, like, y'all. So what he's saying is, this is what he's saying, and literally by the time it was over, they were like, Megan.
That's awesome.
Oh my God. Like,
I almost wonder if those, because you breached those topics and I love it. I almost wonder if they're all so
it's
big.
hard. It was so hard.
I almost need just a credit.
Yeah.
Like, honestly.
Right.
It's like a series of 4. It's like a
it was so
boot
hard,
camp or something.
Man, it was so hard trying to compile it because my vision was like panel party.
Yeah. Panel soiree.
Yeah, really though. And that was exactly my vision. I was like, all right, we're going to have this panel discussion. And then I had a saxophonist there. We had the DJ there.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right.
Now you're just making me jealous I wasn't invited. So.
But you know what? You're going to be on the panel though. You will be on the panel.
I love it.
And it was so good though to see them. Like, it was so many people coming up to me afterwards like, Megan. And I'm talking about since then, I've had people actually get HELOCs.
Yeah.
Since then, I've had people buy their first investment property. And it was just like, wow.
I love
this is amazing. And most of those people now didn't pay a down payment getting in their house.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Yeah.
I mean, probably 80% of my clientele, honestly.
And it's getting, like I said, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but like it goes back to that's the first step.
Yeah.
But they need to sit there and say, okay, there's 20 more steps.
Right.
You guys, you got to pay that mortgage on time.
I think they were so overwhelmed.
You got to pay that mortgage on time for the next 2 years to get the next opportunity. You know, like start with those steps, and then you can build and build and build.
I think they were overwhelmed. I'm not gonna lie. I think they were like.
I feel like you could piece it into a boot camp.
Yeah.
It probably needs to be more sessions, and then they could just chew on each.
Yeah.
And almost like pick and choose. Like, I've already got my credit dialed in, so I'm going to go to the next step.
Yeah.
So, but I love it. I mean, I think you have a great heart to help people.
I appreciate that.
And, you know, like I said, I just appreciate this conversation. And
same.
It's been so fun. I didn't know a lot of your background. I didn't know your history of how you grew up and stuff and all that kind of stuff. So it's amazing. And I always say, time is our most valuable thing.
Oh, yeah.
And for you to sit down with me for, you know, this hour and hang out is just
absolutely.
I feel honored, and I hope that, you know, what our listeners get from it, from the investment, because we do a lot of investment. We talk about, you know, we have some people that flip and all that. I hope they hear, you know, the side of it that's like real people are going into these homes that you're flipping. And it's not about the budget line at the end of the thing. Like, don't shortchange it, because that's someone's home at the end of the day.
House,
And so they still got to make money. I get it.
For sure. It's got to be balanced.
But, like, just don't halfway do things, because at the end of the day, you know, we're in the people business and we need to take care of people. Because I know a flipper in town, he's really good at what he does, and he doesn't shortchange it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm sure there's been moments where it hits his profit line.
Oh, yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think he really enjoys the process of creating a home that a family's going to be in.
Absolutely.
And the same thing I would say for rentals, you know, like when I go in and flip my rentals, I don't just like, I've got to still make it economical.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I don't halfway do things.
Yes.
For the sake of, you know, trying to budget. Yeah. I'm like, hey, in the long term, if you make a tenant happy with the place, they'll stay longer, and it'll be a win-win.
Absolutely.
And so I think even on the investor side, we need to educate people to bring excellence, to bring quality, to bring their best, to care, so that we ultimately are making a better world. And that may sound like really high and flighty as far as aspirations, but I think that's I mean, what are we here for than to make the people around us better?
I think you're right. And I think that people, I think you're 100% right. And I think that from an agent standpoint, right, if I see or if I know that there's a certain investor that's done this property, then I'm like, oh,
we're doing it. We're buying it.
We're good. Like, you know, I see it. I'm like, oh, I've had an investor, literally, we came in to the house. They had cleaned the carpets. they had spoiled, I guess.
Right.
So you could smell it in the house.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, hey, it was kind of stinky when we came in there, but we love it. So he was like, we'll replace it. I'm like, well, since you're going to replace it, can you do laminate instead of carpet? And he did it.
That's awesome.
He did it. And I'll never forgot that. And so moving forward, anytime I see his name, I'm like, oh, bet.
We're doing
Great.
it. Yeah.
Let's do it. Because,
awesome.
And ultimately.
Reputation.
Reputation is everything. And I think that that's one thing that investors don't fully get sometimes. It's like, you're going to run into these agents again 9 times out of 10. And so if their client is calling them because this was halfway done, what do you think that agent is going to think about you? You know what I mean? And I just feel like you get back what you put out in the world. You put good out, you're going to get good back. You put out this, you might get that back. It's a balance.
I hear that. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
I appreciate you, Todd.
Yeah, for sure.